My name is Trevor. I'm 23 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
All right, Trevor. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was born in, actually.
Okay. So this is
Uh,
all you've ever known.
Pretty much, yeah. Since I
All
was
right.
a wee little boy.
Okay. Do you know, does it go very far back in your family?
Not too far. On both my parents' sides, it's just my grandparents that found it. Um, I don't exactly remember. I didn't get a lot of like family stories growing up, so like I've never even met my mom's side of the family, so uh, there's a lot that I'm sure I would love to give you that I can't, but I know they both got it pretty young, and my dad, uh, my dad's parents are still active and still in, and then my mom's side is kind of all not active or disfellowship, hence why I've never met them. So it was kind of a weird um, life. Like for a very long time as a kid, I didn't realize that people could have two sets of grandparents. I just thought you just had the one
Oh,
because
wow. Yeah.
that's all I ever knew.
Well, yeah. And that just goes to show we all think whatever we grow up in is normal because it's normal for us, right?
Yeah,
That's all we've
exactly.
ever known.
Yeah.
Um, so did you know growing up that did you know the reason that you weren't seeing the other side of the family when you were a little kid, or did you find out later?
Uh, when I was a very little kid, I didn't really think about it. I didn't like it was never talked about. It wasn't like, hey, by the way, there's this family that we're not going to bring to you that you can't meet. I just didn't know they existed, to be honest. Like I never thought twice about it.
Hmm.
Maybe I just wasn't a particularly smart kid, but uh, yeah, I never really questioned too much as a kid. I just kind of went with it. Um, and the more that I like was around my mother and she would kind of like give me a little bit of like her past life, I was like, whoa. And then I'd ask more and she would kind of be very like change the subject and kind of thing. So I think it was something that was kind of purposefully not talked about in the house because um, I think it just kind of depressed her. It made her sad because she couldn't talk to her dad either. He was disfellowshipped. So um, I think it was just kind of hard on her too.
Hmm. So your parents, I guess at least your mom knows what it's like to have to cut off her own father. Um, Pretty
Yeah,
big deal.
yeah. I from what I remember, and I'm not 100% sure if this is true, so keep that in mind.
Sure.
But when she was a teenager, that's kind of when her parents and her sister kind of started to kind of start to fade a little bit. But she, stuck up for what she believed in and like would always make an effort to go to the meetings and would always make an effort to, go out and service and those things when no one else was doing that in her house. And eventually she I think she got kicked out or something um, because of it. Uh, yeah, it wasn't a great situation for her for a while there. And yeah, I wish I remembered all of it. I wish I could heard all of it, but yeah, that was not a very talked about thing. I think I
Yeah,
heard the story one time.
it is interesting. I think hmm, maybe it's something people can comment about in the comments on YouTube below, but I just wonder, do most people's parents really talk about their past a lot? I know mine didn't, and I really had to drag it out of them later as an adult to some degree. It just seems like there's so much that's not talked about our families and such, especially the parts of our family that we don't talk to.
Right.
And it does kind of create a void in a lot of our lives that we really don't know a lot about our families. It seems anecdotally in my
Yeah.
coaching practice, the people that I work with oftentimes have not, you know, they've got some sort of quote worldly family out there, but they've never been connected. and they feel very awkward and estranged from their own families, which is really sad.
Yeah, I think it's completely changed my outlook on what family even is, to be honest with you, because
Yeah.
people who are like super close with their grandparents or their uncles or cousins, I'm like, I can't understand that. Like, I don't know what that's like.
Me neither.
And it doesn't make me sad so much because it's just, I don't feel that much about like, oh, I'm related to you, therefore I am obligated to care about you. But I think it's allowed me to kind of create my own sort of family and choose the people that I want to be close with. And as I think so, I think that's a good thing that came from it, at least. But
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
yeah, I don't have the same like family ideal that like big family thing that a lot of people had growing up. And I don't think a lot of witnesses do.
No, I don't think so either. Same here.
Yeah.
And I've been around some family, and it's cool, and I like it, and I enjoy seeing how close they are all together. And I
Yeah.
remember even questioning, like, was it last year, I guess, in 2021, we went to a so my aunt retired. It was her retirement party, and we were invited to go. And I was so super excited to go. It was awesome. And I went, and man, I've got like this huge family out there, and all these kids running around and people having fun, and they all know about each other. And I just remember looking at my wife with a tear in my eye and being like, how did my parents leave this? Like,
Yeah.
when you think about that, our families left like a whole group of people themselves in order to join
Right.
Jehovah's Witnesses. It's really sad that they could
Yeah.
leave what was a pretty cool family, but it is what it is. And then, of course, like you, I don't have those attachments either, and I have a
Right.
lot of chosen family too. So we can make family where we can't, where we need to.
Exactly. Yeah.
So looking back at you and your family growing up, um, how do you feel, or what do you feel the worldview was that your family gave you as a little kid? Because again, this is all you ever knew. So how did it make you see the world around you?
I mean, honestly, as bad as it sounds, it's probably a very common answer too. Pretty judgmental. Not intentionally, but I definitely bought into the entire, we're God's chosen people, so therefore we're all gonna make it. We're gonna be in paradise, and you know, all these people here, they don't know what they're missing, that kind of thing. Um, so I was very, I wouldn't say egotistical, but I definitely had a certain, I don't know, thing about me that I felt like I was better than people around me. Uh, Myself and witnesses were better than other people because that's kind of what you're told. And it wasn't until like I started hitting like later, like 9 or 10, where I was like, that's probably not right. But for a long time, I was just super, super judgmental of non-witnesses. And then at the same time, though, I was kind of terrified because I was like, do I have what it takes? I don't know. Like when you're immediately faced with the decisions that you make are life or death, um, and this person that you're supposed to worship is going to determine whether or not you live or die. It's how is that not terrifying? Um, so I constantly thought I was better than other people, but questioned whether or not I was good enough for it. So kind of a contradiction there, but
That's a really interesting juxtaposition to
yeah,
think, hey, I'm one of Jehovah's special people, but also that requires me to be special. And can I live up to this?
exactly. Like
Wow.
I knew that the way I lived was different, but anytime I'd have a thought that like was not the way you're supposed to think, or something you're not supposed to do as a witness, it's like, can't believe I just thought that. I'm not going to make it now. So I was super hard on myself too, because I didn't really know like if there was a margin of error. I just figured like maybe if you mess up once, like that's it. That could be all she wrote. So I was super hard on myself early on.
So the judgment that you had was internalized and you turned it on yourself essentially, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I was judgmental of everyone, but I think I was most judgmental of myself.
Yeah, yeah. And that, I mean, that's just a good point for anybody on the outside. Sometimes the things that we think people are worried about us are actually the things that we worry about us
Yeah,
ourselves, and it's just projection. But yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses are masters psychologically of gaslighting you, and then almost getting you to do the same thing internally to
yeah,
yourself. It's that they're really good at what they do, unfortunately. And
yeah,
it's interesting how you can feel so special, but at the same time, so you can feel special and chosen and good, but you can also feel like you're the worst person in the world too, and that you're special in that way.
yeah. But then the feeling that you're so lucky to have the true religion, and that Jehovah has taken a special interest in you, that just puts so much pressure on you to like, well, if anyone's gonna like make it, it should be me. So like, why am I struggling so hard? And then that just adds to the guilt. It just snowballs from there. At least it did for me.
Oh no, it does for a lot of people. Most people struggle with negative self-talk because that's what is the natural byproduct again of the environment that
Yeah,
that we grew up in. So it's interesting to see both sides. So your worldview was one of kind of looking down on the world, so to speak. But then you are also looking down on yourself in certain ways, or super concerned internally about whether or not you could live up to it. So
yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Um, so what was your home life like growing up as a witness? So, what was the temperature of the room there?
Uh Tense to say the least. My mom and dad never really like got along super well. Um, Sometimes we're worse than others, but for the most part, we kind of all have our like separate corners of the house. It was me, my dad, my mom, and my sister, and um, my dad would be either be away at work, or there was a period of time where he worked from home, and he'd just be in the basement all day and see him like once or twice a day. And my mom would just kind of hang out in her room, and so me and my sister were kind of just left to our own devices. We didn't really see our parents much, even though we were all there. We were homeschooled too, so we had nowhere to go. Um, but yeah, it was tough. Like it was very clear that she wasn't happy and my dad wasn't happy, and no one would say anything about it, but it was pretty weird. And I remember a little bit later on, some of my witness friends were like, your family's always had this like weird energy to it. Like no one can really like pinpoint why or what it is. And I'm like, really? I don't. Okay, I didn't know what to make of that. It makes more sense looking back, but um, yeah, it was tense and unhappy, and not to say there weren't good moments, but
Mhm.
overall, home wasn't a safe place. I wouldn't say.
Okay. Um, were were your parents at least united as Jehovah's Witnesses? I mean, did they put up a united front to you kids as far as, were they big on family study, or were you all really regular at the meetings and things like that? Was that kind of the one place where you all did come together?
Um, we did try to go out in service every Saturday and make all the meetings. Family worship was a bit hit or miss sometimes, but I think for the most part they did try to put on a good front for that. And sometimes that was hard because no one would talk about it, but you're expected to play along. You what happened on the car ride there, but once you get there, everyone's all happy and you're just like, yeah, it's great.
The Kingdom Hall personality.
Yeah, and I never really liked that. I mean, who would? But I never liked pretending, but I knew anytime we went out, like went out to anybody's house or, went to the meeting or out in service or whatever, like pretending was involved because, you know, the more honest you were, the more people asked questions and things that I didn't particularly want to deal with. So.
Sure. Because you knew you were pretending, did it ever cross your mind that maybe so many other people you were around were pretending too?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
not until like way later, at least.
Okay.
I think I was just consumed with what I was dealing with. I wasn't really worrying about what other people were going through. I was just worried about what other people were going to say or do that involved me, which I guess is kind of selfish. But yeah, I wasn't too concerned about what other people might be doing.
Sure. I mean, I think all kids are selfish to some degree, right?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's just, you're just a kid. You really don't need to worry about the ills of the world around you. And you're just trying to survive in your own right.
Yeah.
And cope with whatever you're going through. So you mentioned there were good times. So what were the good times for you guys? What would you enjoy together as a family?
One of the biggest things for me growing up that like it was one of my favorite things in the world for a long time as a kid, because it was the only thing that not only did I really enjoy, but I could share that with my dad, which was hockey. So we were, despite the fact that he's never been, or well, he has been, but he's not from Pittsburgh. We were huge Pittsburgh Penguins fans, and we would always watch the games. And I remember in 2009 they won the Stanley Cup, and he was away on a trip, and he called, and we talked about it, and it was like the only thing that we really had that like bonded us. And so anytime that was involved, I was it was always at least a good time.
Nice. So that's Lemieux.
Lemieux's a bit before my time. Yeah, Yager. I think he might be retiring soon, but I think he's
like no, I think Yager's retired, but I just meant like as far as the 09 when that era that you all enjoyed. I was wondering that's not the Crosby era. He's too recent.
Oh yeah, that's Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Don Char, Fleury. Yeah, I could probably name you every single player on that team.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I like to watch hockey. I don't keep up with it a tremendous amount, but I'll watch the Stanley Cup, at the end anyway.
Yeah. And the Avalanche just won the cup.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of crazy seeing like all the people go crazy for that here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I remember I was watching it on TV, and like when the like final horn went, there was like fireworks going off outside my apartment. Like, geez.
Like, oh, that's cool. How far away from where you live today would the stadium be, let's say?
Well, that game was in Florida.
Okay.
Which is, I also lived in Florida. Out from like 1 to 5, lived in Florida. There's not much to talk about there, but
okay.
So that was weird. My two places I'd lived, but we're like an hour 10 from Denver. That's so cool. It's not too far.
So it's safe to say a lot of the state big. I guess I don't know how big hockey is in Colorado. I mean, obviously in Denver, there's a large contingency, but I didn't know if it extended out into the rest of the state a lot.
Yeah, Fort Collins is a pretty big hockey town too.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like the league below it. There's a team in like just south of here too. So.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad. So that was something. So did you and your dad ever get to go to games or anything, or did you just watch them on TV?
Yeah. We would, every time the Penguins would come around, we'd go and watch them. And it was always like so fun. But One of my favorite things though was just we had like an NHL video game that we would play, and we would just like sit on the floor and like, I don't know, play games. I don't know. This is how you play games, apparently. Um, Sorry for people listening. You can't see. I'm just like twiddling my thumbs. Um, but yeah, that was like my favorite thing in the world, honestly. Like, because I didn't really get to bond with anybody like that, and the fact that I was able to share that with him for like an hour or so, you know, a couple times a week was, it meant everything to me. And I still to this day, it's like, of all the things I really miss about my childhood, then that's definitely up there.
Yeah, that's a beautiful moment to be able to just play with your dad, right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
one of the more normal things, and things that I think every kid wants. Um,
Yeah.
so so did you bond much with your mom or sister? Did you all get to do much together?
So especially during, let's say like from the time I was like 9 through like 14, my parents were kind of a little bit more standoffish, like a little bit more distant. And because of that, I did get actually really, really close with my sister, and we're still super close today. Um, she's out too, so can say, but yeah, she's helped me through a lot of it. And she's my older sister. She's 3 years older. And yeah, honestly, like I don't know what that time period would have looked like without her, because I would have had nobody. I would have had no one to talk to, and she was a huge component in me becoming who I am today. So, um, yeah, I was definitely very, very close with her uh, in my teen years, and I did get close with my mother um, for a little bit, but it was. I feel like every time I would try, and like there would always be some sort of setback, and then it would be like done. It would just be over, and I would be like, okay, back to square one, which was rough. And eventually I just kind of stopped trying so much, and yeah, just kind of let it go.
Hmm, fair enough. I mean, all you can do is all you can do. The
Yeah.
relationship's two ways. You can't control that.
Yeah.
Um, Shout out to your sister. I'm glad that she's out as well, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that she was able to be there for you. So it sounds like you were. I know you mentioned earlier homeschooling. So were you homeschooled your entire career, or did you ever, educational career, or were you ever in public school of any sort?
Um, I always did my work from home. I did, I think starting in fifth grade, I switched to like online. So it's kind of public, kind of homeschool. But I never actually went anywhere for school.
So then it be safe to say then you were isolated and didn't have any much exposure to or any friends outside of
100%.
the organization?
100%. I don't think I knew anybody that wasn't like on my TV that wasn't a witness. Like
Wow.
that, it was everything. Uh, so much so to the point where I was almost like kind of scared of people who weren't witnesses. Like just like going to the grocery store and be like, all right, I'm keeping my distance. Like I don't see you at the hall. You must be bad. Like so. Yeah, I was very sheltered and unaware of the world around me.
Well, and I can see where you would develop that fear. I mean, there must be some reason mom and dad are literally keeping me away from everyone,
Right.
So, and you've never talked to anybody who's not a witness. So kind of creates that there's us and then there's them, right?
Yeah.
So
Totally.
they're not one of us at the store. So that's a problem.
Yeah.
Um, so you're isolated there. What about at the Kingdom Hall? Did you have any friends there? Did you feel like you ever fit in? Did you enjoy any parts of it, or was it all drudgery for you?
Um, when I was younger, uh, I had a friend who your average childhood friend, I guess. Like we'd go out and play outside and things like that, which was really nice. And um, I really enjoyed hanging out with him. And unfortunately, both of our parents were like, for some reason, very like, I don't know, they didn't want us hanging out that much. And I don't know why, but it would be like maybe once every like month and a half, we'd like hang out outside of the Kingdom Hall. And so I didn't see him that much, but that made it all the more exciting when, we had a sleepover or something. Because I was like, this never happens. And like, I loved that so much. And eventually we moved away from there when I was 11. So um, I'm sorry if my time frame is kind of all over the place.
That's fine.
But I moved away from there when I was 11. And then in that new hall that we moved into, it was not the greatest for me. There were a lot of people my age. None of them wanted to be my friend.
Is that because you were the outsider who came from somewhere else and they were like a tight clique, or?
I think it was just because I have always been a little bit different. Like even like in the hall, I've always been, I don't know, kind of weird. Like I never wanted to fit in, so I never tried to. So whatever they were doing, I'd be like, okay, but what about these things? What about the things I like? Like that's cool too. And no one wanted anything to do with that. So, which is understandable. But I didn't really have good, decent friends there. And there were these couple kids that hung out with me. One of them, she really liked me, like romantically. And then the other one, his idea of having a good time was like, hey, and kept punching me. Like I'd go home with bruises after hanging out with him. And eventually I was like, that's probably not the greatest thing. I probably shouldn't hang out with this guy. So after a while, we moved congregations again and found my most recent witness best friend. And he was great. He's a great guy. And, I always have hope for people getting out, but
sure,
we'll see.
So, at what point in your life did you eventually get baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses?
So I was 15.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there was this girl I really liked at the time, and she had just gotten baptized, and I was like, I know what I need to do. So next meeting, like the next meeting after she got baptized, I went to an elder and I was like, hey, look, I think it's time. I think I'm ready. I was not like, I don't think anyone really is, especially not kids, but yeah, I missed like one question on the whole thing. Got baptized like, I think it was like a month later. Like it was like super quick after the questions was the next like convention or something, whatever it was. But yeah, I got baptized like a month later. And then like after that, I was like, why did I do that? Like right after I was like, nah, I'm not ready, but I had to pretend that I was super confident in my decision, because you can't be like, I don't know if I should have done that, but it's not very good.
So after you got baptized, did that self-judgment ramp up as far as, looking internally and saying, oh, was I really good enough for this?
If anything, actually it was more the inverse. Like I started to question, I'm not ready. How active is Jehovah in this process? If I got accepted, I'm like,
Okay.
If this were real, I don't think I should have been, right? So that was like one of the first doubts that actually started to creep in, because I knew that I wasn't ready, and that I still got approved and everything. And I was like, it kind of sketched me out a little bit.
Yeah, I can see why that might, why did Jehovah let me get baptized?
Yeah.
That's yeah, that could be a harsh realization for some people. Okay. Well, at least I guess you're trying to be honest with yourself about it,
Yeah.
and where you fit in. So pre-baptism or leading up to that, so using 15 as a kind of a cutoff point, were there any seminal moments in your life as a young witness, growing up until that point when you actually did get baptized? Anything that stands out to you that happened?
Um, Not particularly. I think most of it was kind of more of the same of what I've already said. So
Okay.
yeah,
So you're just a kid, living life, playing hockey video games with your dad,
yeah,
at times trying to make it and find a friend here or there.
yeah,
Sounds like it was pretty isolated in a lot of ways. Did you even,
yeah.
like, out in service, did you get to work with other people, and did you enjoy that at all? Like, even the
Uh,
older ones in the congregation or
I
anything?
did get to work with a lot of different people. No, I did not enjoy it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was always my least favorite part of being a witness. I couldn't stand going door to door. Like, I don't like talking to strangers as it is. And the last thing I could possibly want to talk to strangers about is how what they believe is wrong. Uh, so I despised it. I would do it well enough. Anytime there was like a return visit or anything that I had, I would be like, "Oh, I just went. Like, we don't need to go back." It's like, I haven't been there in like 4 months. Like, I'm not going back. So yeah, wasn't my favorite part.
So are you saying it's kind of cringy to go to people's houses and tell them that everything they believe is wrong?
Yeah, it's a weird concept. Like, you
Yeah.
think that's totally fine, but no,
Yeah.
they don't like that too much.
No, no, especially not on Christmas morning when you show up
I
at their
know,
door and they've got their family and you've got the issue of the magazine that is like why Christmas is wrong.
right? Oh man,
Yeah, that's
can't
pretty
believe I did
cringy.
that. Honestly,
um, so then you're 15, you get baptized. Does that ratchet up pressure on you in any way? Because I know sometimes that can be the case where they're like, ooh, fresh blood, let's make him pray at the congregation, let's give him responsibilities. Did you find that?
honestly, I feel like if anything, that started like right before I got baptized. My
Mm,
congregation wasn't like super strict about like, oh, you got to be baptized to do all these things. Like, I was doing mics before I was baptized. I know a lot of congregations don't do that, which I only know because I've listened to the podcast. But yeah, I was like, I had just moved to that new hall, and before I ever got baptized, like, hey, you want to do mics? You want to do mics? I'm like, I guess, I guess I'll do mics, which I like doing them because I didn't have to pay attention to the actual meeting as much. Because that's so boring. I would fall asleep. Like, I hated meeting. Everything that I had to do as a witness, I genuinely did not enjoy. Um, but yeah, I definitely had a lot of people looking at me, and a lot of elders were kind of trying to get me to do new things like literature counter and do the mics. Here's more talks for you to give, and why don't you have more Bible studies and those kinds of things. And I was just like, I didn't really change anything. Like, I never tried to please anybody. I was like, I'm totally fine if I'm just that guy that shows up at the hall that like answers once or twice a meeting and then goes home. Like, I don't need to be an elder. I don't want to be like, I would always say I wanted to be a circuit overseer, but like, I definitely did not want to be.
Interesting. So why did you tell people you wanted to be a circuit overseer?
I guess I just wanted people to think that I had spiritual goals when I really didn't. Like, the only goals and aspirations that I had were completely separate from the religion. So anytime that I would bring those up, I would either get shut down like, no, you can't do that, or okay, that's great, but what about Bethel? What about the? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. Like, I don't want to do those things. So I just made something up that sounded nice that people would kind of stop asking questions.
Yeah, you're trying to get them off your back, right?
Yeah.
So what were the goals and aspirations that young Trevor had
Yeah.
that were getting shut down?
So I really wanted to be a singer growing up. Like, I remember being like 7 years old in the kitchen, forcing my mother to listen to me sing and like rate me on a scale of 1 to 10. And she was not like, she was honest. I'll give
She
her that.
was
She's
the
like, nah,
Simon
okay.
Cowell of the bunch.
Yeah. Like, all right, here's what you did wrong. All right. She's not a professional singer. She doesn't know everything, but to her credit, and I'm glad she was very honest with me, because I was just like, all right, I'll work on it. Thanks, Mom. Like, go off and keep practicing that. So that's something I wanted to be in a band for a very long time and just be a singer. And, that's something that like you can't like do all the way. Like, you can start a little witness band if you want to, but like if you want to actually get somewhere and reach a lot of people, not really a great thing. I mean, look at what happened to Michael Jackson, right? So
Was that actually used against you when you wanted to, or did people bring that up?
a couple times, yeah.
Wow.
Because it was like the Thriller video, wasn't it? Like that's what got him in trouble. He even put a disclaimer in it. So funny. I love what telling people that Michael Jackson was a witness too, because I don't know, people don't believe me, I guess.
Oh yeah, lots of people were, but
Yeah,
um, so what else did you want to do as a young person?
yeah. My ideal situation was that I would go play a hockey game and like score the game-winning goal, and then after that, I'd go home and shower real quick, and then I'd go play a concert for people, and that was my ideal lifestyle as just growing up. Like, honestly, even now that sounds great. If I could do that now, that would be awesome. um, but those weren't things that I was particularly allowed to explore to the full extent, and especially not being able to um, be in public school. Like, the idea of like joining clubs or like learning more about these things was kind of off the table. Like, if I wanted to learn more about it, I just had to like do research on my own and try. Like, that was the only thing I could do. So um, I didn't think I was ever going to make the NHL by playing hockey in my garage. So I started to focus a lot more on music and singing. And um, yeah, that's pretty much been my dream since I was a very little kid.
Uh, you can see, I don't know if it's the case with you or not, but I mean, just being so isolated and everything, making the game winning, scoring the game winning goal, and then going and playing in a band. I mean, it's just,
Yeah,
you can just see you being like, but what about me? Can I be somebody too? Can somebody,
yeah,
we all just wanted some praise or acknowledgement, or we
yeah,
wanted to be special in some way instead of having to just be one of many in the cult all the time.
yeah. Because again, going back to what I said about the worldview feeling like better than everyone else, uh, that in and of itself is so one dimensional. Like,
Mhm.
there's not really any other way that you can look at your life. Like, it. That's why people, I believe, often get so attached to the title of being a Jehovah's Witness, and that kind of becomes their personality, because there's if when that is your life, there's not too much else that you can do. And if the rest of what's left over that you can do doesn't feel like you, then you're kind of stuck with, well, I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's all you can say. And that in itself is very isolating, because even though you're surrounded by people who are of the same religion, and people that you are, allowed to talk to, uh, you don't feel like you're ever talking about something real. You don't feel like you're ever talking about something that's you know, like, because if the only thing you have to talk about is the same thing that everyone else around you is talking about, you know, there is no sense of individuality, and everyone needs that to some extent, no matter how, you know, committed of a witness you are. You got to be able to talk about things that you like and things that you do sometimes, you know? So I feel like I never really had that. And that just made me like quietly determined to like I was certain that I was going to be the first Jehovah's Witness to play in the NHL and then be in a big, because I was like, I have to do this. Like, I have to be me. So I had some high aspirations for sure.
Well, that's cool that you knew. So, well, I guess it's good in the end, but bad in the moment, and that is that. So, the ego is the part of us that attaches to a label. In this case, it would be Jehovah's Witnesses. I am Jehovah's Witnesses, right? I am one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And so that becomes our identity. But here you are being forced into that role and mold and saying, but I'm not. I
Yeah.
That's not really who I want to be. And good for you, because honestly, a lot of people struggle to even have some inkling of who they were, what they wanted to be, or other dreams.
Yeah.
And so you did know that there were at least some things that you were interested in that were a part of who Trevor was, that you didn't want to let go of and weren't willing to, and wanted to continue pursuing, even if maybe the NHL isn't reachable through your garage. Maybe being a garage band, is something that is reachable to
Yeah.
some degree. And so I think it's cool that you at least hung on to these parts of yourself. But it's got to be hard to be a teenage kid. All teenagers want to fit into some degree somewhere
Yeah.
anyway. And to feel like I have to go be with these people all the time, and I'm not one of them.
Yeah. Um, whenever like whenever Jehovah's name was mentioned in conversation, I would kind of tune out. It's not that I didn't believe it at the time, because there definitely was a lot of my teen years where I did. Um, but it's just I was so tired of hearing about it. Like, I just want to like I want to talk about anything else but that. But um, I was also aware that I couldn't really bring up or get at least go in depth about the things that I was really interested in, because somehow that always got turned into, why aren't you in Bethel? Why aren't you pioneering? Why aren't you? And it's like, so I just, honestly, I stayed super quiet, which was easy for me because I wasn't around a lot of people growing up. So I just kind of started to mind my own business and kind of isolate myself more purposefully, if that makes sense. So um, yeah, just wouldn't really talk to many people, honestly.
Okay. So, so where do you go from being baptized? Like around here, you were baptized at 15. Around here, 16 is when people start to maybe drive or find some independence at times, get a little job, something. So how did your teenage years play out for you?
So I graduated like a week before I turned 17. So I like to say I graduated at 16 because that sounds pretty cool. Um,
Yeah, it
but
does.
I just started a year early because I was homeschooled. So it's really not that impressive, but it sounds impressive. Anyway, but after that, I just kind of started working because, going to college wasn't really um, on the, to-do list. I never thought I was going to go to college. And looking back from this point on, I'm kind of glad I didn't. So I don't really have regret there. Um, but yeah, I basically just started working, and then it was just other witness stuff, and trying to woo a girl every now and then, and not getting very far for a while. But yeah, it was not that exciting, to be honest with you. But
And you had your one friend, right? At that point?
I had a couple friends then. I had
Okay.
uh, the one girl that I actually got baptized for. I was like, look, this is how I feel about you. And she's like, that's nice. Thank you. And then we just stayed best friends like
Okay.
since then. So, um, yeah, I definitely did have friends and some sort of a support group at that point. But um, yeah, for the most part, it was work, meetings, and then I don't know, whatever else I could find to do. I
Okay.
didn't really hang out with too many people at that point.
So you were just sounds like a lot of your life was kind of spent, I don't know, in the shadows, or like, just kind of in the
Yeah,
corner, like a wallflower a little bit, observing what was going on, trying not
yeah,
to get too involved because it wasn't really you.
100%. I had like these huge dreams and aspirations of what I
Yeah.
wanted to do, where like the attention was all on me. But in my actual life, I was so afraid to be noticed, because it just in my experience, being noticed wasn't necessarily a good thing. You know, you want to fit in with the mold, and you want to be, you know, you don't want to wear pants that are too tight. You know, like it's standing out in that context can be a lot more dangerous. And so, considering that's what I always wanted to be, was noticed, it was scary when you were, and it was constantly flipped back on you as, well, why this, why that, you know, everything that I'm doing wrong. Because to be a nice little witness boy, you kind of need to be, you know, you're at your best when you're not noticed, you know, like, unless you're on stage, of course. But um, the less people talk about kids in the congregation, the less they're getting into trouble. So, which, to my own credit, I didn't really get into trouble. I was, when it comes to following the rules, I did a good job of that.
So were you one who watched other people get in trouble and just kind of learned from their mistakes and was like, I'll just sit over here and do nothing so that I can't get in trouble or something?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, not to say I didn't do anything that wasn't against the rules. Um, like I smoked my first cigarette um, at 18 when I was finally allowed to buy them, and I was still a witness. And you know,
Hmm.
um, I definitely wasn't perfect when it comes to that. Uh, I don't know, a guideline, I guess. But yeah, I just there were definitely a lot of kids at that point getting into trouble and getting disfellowshipped and reproved and things like that. And um, I had nothing to do with it. To be honest, I'm still not totally sure what happened with that. Um, but with that kind of came, people look at me as like a role model, like an example, because I wasn't a part of that. I'm like, "You're right, I wasn't invited." Like, of course I wasn't. Um,
So had you been invited, might you have been a part of something?
I don't know. It's hard
Yeah,
to say. I definitely could have been.
sure.
Um, so that honestly put a lot of pressure on me, because I was like, all of a sudden, like the golden child, because I was one of the few who didn't get in trouble from this thing. There was like one big thing that happened, like, I don't know, like 10 or like 15 kids from like different congregations all got like in trouble in some way. It was like, it was a big thing. And I was like one of the very few who wasn't a part of it. And somehow that made me more spiritual than I was before,
Well, you were the last
in
man
their eyes.
standing, right?
Pretty much, yeah. It was like me and my sister, and then like my friend, and that was it. Like basically everyone else was like involved in some way, um, from what I remember. And yeah, I remember after that happened, it was even worse because there was less people for me to talk to, and more was expected of me. So I kind of started to be like, "Mm, I just I'm sick. I'm not going to meetings." That's when I kind of started to like dodge as much as I could, like just being in those situations, because it was super uncomfortable for me, because I knew that that's not what I wanted to do, but I still felt like that's what I should want to do. And it was tough because I knew which side was winning. And it made me feel bad, and then it makes me feel guilty, and then it's like, well, then you're not worthy anyway, so what does it matter? And then a lot of depression started seeping in through that, which I guess I'll just jump into that.
Yeah. So you're living at home at this time still,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you're like 18 and at home?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. And at that point, I was just like, I don't have a purpose. Like, I don't belong here. I'm not a witness. Like, I can't, this is not who I am. But I had my doubts, but I didn't not believe it yet. So my viewpoint was, well, I guess that's it then. Like, what's the point of me continuing to live out the rest of this life if I already know how it's going to end? Why continue suffering through it just to die anyway and be killed off by Jehovah? So I was like, I'll just do it myself. And that led to several attempts ending up in the hospital, and it was not a fun time for me or for anybody around me, honestly. It was really dark, and yeah, I look back at that time and with a lot of like regret and shame, kind of. But
Really?
Yeah,
Well, I
it's
understand the regret part, but I mean,
right.
shame. I mean, you were just a hurting kid who was put into a bad position. There's nothing wrong with you. You just wanted to be yourself, weren't allowed to be. And I think uh, I like how just the way you framed it. And I can say I was there too, just, and at 31. And that was basically, I mean, their doctrine with everything being prescribed henceforth, right? How
Mm,
the whole world's going to go, how everything's going to go from this day forward. You know what the eventuality is going to be if you don't play the game like they want you to play
yeah,
it. So I think that their doctrine plays into a lot of the suicidal ideation or attempts
it
that
does.
people have, because it's like, well, if I'm not going to make it anyway, and I'm not good enough, then what's the point?
Yeah,
And that's how I felt as well. It's like, I can't keep up with this. I can't be what they want me to be. So why even bother being around? Plus, I kind of hate myself for not being able to force myself into the mold and be who they want me to be.
yeah. Oh, first of all, I'm sorry you've felt that. That's not
Oh
fun.
yeah, I understand this.
But
Sorry you were too.
yeah, but yeah, you're spot on. Their doctrine is like, if you really look into it, I'm surprised more people don't feel that way. I'm glad that more do not, but I got to a point with it where it was very difficult for me to see it any other way.
Mm-hmm.
I was just, I knew that I didn't even believe it enough. Like, that was one of the things, ironically, that made me feel like I wasn't going to make it, was because I didn't believe it enough. Which if I had just gone a little bit further and didn't believe it all the way, then it wouldn't have been a problem.
Right, but it's like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah,
Can everybody else believe it, but I'm having a hard time with it?
exactly.
Which
Yeah,
is what they tell you too, right? There's something
yeah,
wrong with you if you're not picking up on all of this. If you don't feel the way you said something earlier, oh, I can't remember. Oh, about judging your own thoughts. Oh, I thought this thing. Ooh, what a bad person I am.
yeah,
I mean, dear God, they've got us judging our thoughts and as to whether or not we're a good or a bad person, or like it reflects our value as a human. It's just
yeah,
so messed up and it's so insidious. And when we get to that point, I mean, it's hard to ever feel. How could you possibly feel worthy of the fictitious hope that they hold out?
yeah. It's, I don't think anyone can, like,
No, because you can't be perfect.
exactly. Yeah,
Everyone
follow.
sins according to them.
Right. Yeah, there is no winning. Like even like the highest of the highest, member in your congregation or in your circuit or district or whatever, I guarantee you they don't feel worthy. Like, or if they do, they're probably narcissists. But like,
Oh, and there's lots of those.
oh yeah,
Yes.
unfortunately, I'm well aware of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's impossible to feel good enough when the parameters are just not realistic or possible. Like, and that's obviously by design. Because if
Yeah.
you felt like
And
you were good enough, there's not, you're not going to try as hard. You're not going to donate as much, right?
well, they sell you the disease so they can sell you the cure, right?
Yeah.
The disease is your sinful nature so that they can tell you how to get there, how to erase that and then get to where you want to go sometime later in a way that benefits them.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, again, so guilt is I did a bad thing. Shame is I did a bad thing, so I'm a bad person. You have nothing to be ashamed of at all. I mean, I think we were just, I hope you can look at yourself with compassion because you were just a hurting person, subjected to this machine that eats people up and spits them out constantly. You were just a kid,
Yeah. An 18-year-old kid. Yeah.
19-year-old kid. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I definitely try to give myself more slack. One of the things that every therapist I've ever been to has told me is that I'm way too hard on myself. So
Well, of
I'm
course you are. You
trying.
were trained to be. That's how they controlled you.
Right.
Again, back to the negative self-talk. So they gaslight us and then they make us turn that internally against ourselves. And so we start, judging ourselves. It's all just a reflection of what they put upon us. And
100%.
yeah, at 31, I mean, just for some fellow feeling here, I don't know about you, but I mean, I'd walk around like I'd make some minor mistake in life. I mean, a math error, adding something up that I caught and had to go back and redo again, but like not a big deal, just like doing the numbers for a cleaning business or something.
Yeah.
Just some little minor thing that I even caught. And just be like, you motherfucking piece of shit. I mean, like, I would just be
Yeah.
so hard on myself. I mean, just brutal. And
Yeah.
it's like, man, you just made a math error. Like it happens. You just go recalculate it and move on. You hit the
Yeah.
wrong button. It's not the end of the world, but that's how they view you. And that's how you start to view yourself is just, you're just this good for nothing, lowly slave for Jehovah.
Right. Yeah.
Slaves don't value themselves very much typically because they're not valued. That's why they're called slaves.
Yeah.
And it's just when you're supposed to see yourself that way, you can't. We were taught to devalue ourselves, to disown ourselves and lead ourselves like a slave, not to love ourselves or appreciate ourselves
Yeah.
or have compassion.
I always thought it was very disturbing that slave was like the term that would like we're Jehovah's slaves, and I always hated that. I'm like, that's so. I don't like that. Like, I would never say that, but especially there was like a Watchtower article a couple years ago, I think, that kind of talked about why it's okay that we're slaves for Jehovah, and I was like, I'm no, nope.
When is that word ever used in a
Really awkward.
positive context? Ever?
The witnesses really try. Their
They
governing body is
do.
really trying, but it's not working.
Yeah, they
Not
try
for
to
me
change the
anyway.
English language a lot to
Oh
fit
yeah,
whatever they want it to be. But again, that's just part of if we can control the words you can use, then we can control your
yeah,
thoughts and feelings around those words.
yeah. That cult lingo.
Yeah. So yeah. So I'm sorry. So you were saying you reached this dark period. Um, I mean, and I have to say, Trevor, I think that there's a lot more people out there who feel that way than you know, and probably
Yeah,
people that you knew that felt that way. You might not have known. Maybe they never attempted, or they attempted and nothing was made of it, and you just never knew.
yeah,
There's a lot of that You are not
Yeah.
alone.
Oh yeah. I definitely know a lot of my friends went through something similar, at least similar feelings. And
Yeah.
I'm sure like there's plenty more people that I know that I didn't tell me that.
Yeah.
It's just really sad because it's so avoidable, and it's, you know, the governing body doesn't care if we feel like that. They don't care.
No.
They just want us to feel like we need them. And I knew that I didn't need them. Um, but I didn't know what I needed. I knew that I didn't quite believe it. I didn't quite not believe it. I had some doubts, but they were really minor doubts that like I was like, okay, like, you know how there's that like, well, the organization's still run by humans, so not everything's gonna be perfect. Like it was one of those things where I was like, well, it's probably just that then. Like, um I do remember the first thing that I would ever like knew for a fact. I was like, they're wrong on this. And it was I was reading the Young People Ask book, and they had this whole article on why masturbation is terrible. And I was like, okay. So I read it, and I was like, this this is bullshit. Like the Bible does says nothing about this. Like they're making this up. I can like they're clearly just making this up because they don't want people to do that. But like I knew like that was complete BS. And I remember when I first thought that, I was so proud of myself that and I don't know why I was looking back on it, but I was very proud of myself for coming to my own conclusion on something and disagreeing with the governing body. Um, I was like so happy that I was like thinking for myself, I guess. But you know, all of my doubts were kind of that uh severity. So like not it's not gonna like convince me that it's all untrue at that point. So to a large extent, I still believed it, but I knew that it wasn't for me, and I knew that it wasn't something that I was capable of keeping up with. And so eventually I was like, well, instead of just, you know, just dying and getting it over with, I have a little bit of life left. I might as well just live it. But at the same time, I didn't want to disappoint anyone, so I kept tried to keep up a good face and everything. But at that point, my goals really shifted from, uh, you know, witness goals and like trying to, you know, at least keep that around to just kind of, you know what, no, I do want to be a singer. I do want to do that. So I'm going to try to make that happen. And I had no idea how to start that process. Uh, but yeah, that was a moment like right after the dark period. That was when I was like, I need to start living more for me. And amidst all the doubts, it kind of started the snowballing effect of what would later on eventually lead to me leaving.
So then, how did you start? I like that you're, you know, because what you're talking about here is you're kind of starting to finally give some credence to yourself and to what you
Mhm.
want and to who you are,
Yeah.
and feeling good even about your own thoughts, even though they may fly in the face of, you know, whatever it is Watchtower has to say on a
Yeah.
thing. Like you said, you were seeing things wrong with just some of the cultural aspects of the witnesses. I mean, some of their little doctrines and teachings, but maybe not their whole worldview, biblically speaking.
Right.
So, how did you? Where did you take that snowball? And did it involve? Was part of it you going and pursuing musical aspirations?
So the entire thing is kind of a long story, which is fine. Uh, I feel like we have time here. Hopefully, we all have time. But initially, after that happened, um, my best friend had just got reinstated, and we had a party at her house. It was a surprise party in her basement, and I met someone there that really caught my eye, and we started dating. And she's great. Like, I still can't speak a bad word about her. She's amazing, but her parents did not like me at all. Her dad was he had like served as I believe a CO or a district overseer when those were, I don't remember. All the terminology is kind of rusty for me. Sorry. But he was down in like Ecuador, I think.
Oh, wow.
And so he had some experience down there, and they were actually going to, their whole family was going to move back there to Colombia for a little bit to like serve in the city of Medellin, which I remember there was somebody who brought up that city before, and I was like, what? Well, that's where they were going to go. And I was actually going to, we had it all planned. We were going to move out there, or I was going to move out there with her, and we were going to get married here and then move down there. And we had like this whole thing planned, and we had a date picked out and everything. But at the end of it, her parents just decided, no, that's not happening. And they were incredibly abusive, both emotionally and physically towards her. Just terrible, honestly, just because she loved me and she wanted to be with me. We weren't doing anything wrong. There was nothing that was incorrect from a witness standpoint. They just didn't want to let it happen because, I don't know, maybe I didn't have enough Bible studies, so I wasn't good enough for their daughter. I don't know what it was.
Maybe they're just very, very controlling of their daughter.
Maybe. I think as well, like, if I wasn't what they envisioned, they feel like it might look bad on them.
Of course, it's all about appearances.
So yeah, so that's what it was actually one of your podcasts that like I was listening to, and I heard someone say something along those lines, and like, that's probably what it was, wasn't it? But yeah, I think
so you all were dating and had been for some time, and were going to get married, and her parents basically said to her, I guess, no, you cannot get married.
we hadn't told them that about like our plans to get married.
Oh,
I was just at a point in my life right then where like I couldn't quite support her yet. But I was, I wasn't far off from it. And then like she wanted to work too, so it would have been totally fine. But I think they saw that and they were like, I don't know. Honestly, it could have been any number of things, but
it's just kind of, so how old was she?
we were both 19 at the time.
Okay. It's just kind of wild to, I don't know, think of a parent just slamming the door down like that on there.
So her dad, I remember we had a date. Not with her dad, with her. I had a date with her. And she told me before she left, she had a conversation with her dad that he was like, look, I don't approve of what you're doing, but you're an adult. You can make your own decisions as long as it makes you happy. And she was like, cool, I'm going to go on a date with Trevor. And he's like, all right. And then the very next morning, he's like, you need to break up with that boy or else I'm going to make your life a living hell. And her mom threatened to leave her when they went to Colombia. And it was just like, it just got to a point where eventually it got too much for her, understandably so. And, she wasn't able to follow through with anything. So I still, they handled that terribly. And because of that, these are super, super, super highly respected witnesses in their congregation and basically in their whole area. And I was just like, how could you claim to love Jehovah so much, the God of love, and then treat people like that?
I mean, the God of control.
Yeah, I mean, what God is supposed to be, what you're told God is.
Yeah. But their God is a very controlling God.
Yeah,
And the way that they worship him is very controlling. So that's what they were doing, was just shutting her down and controlling her.
Yeah, 100%.
Wow.
But that made me so angry because I knew it was so unfair, that I was just like, no, there's no way Jehovah's a part of this. There's no way that like this is something's wrong here. Something's fishy. And admittedly, it is kind of a weird thing for me to like cling on to as like, okay, now something's wrong. But yeah, it was right around that time too where my sister actually left, and she and I had a discussion. She sat down on the couch and was like, I think I'm gonna leave. And I was like, oh, and I was already, my guard already went up. I was like, all right, maybe I shouldn't talk to you too much then. But I was also like, it's my sister, like, hear her out. And we had in our house a very old like watchtower. Like we had one from I think the 1920s, like brown like book watchtower thing with like the cross and the crown and everything.
Oh, like the bound volume type of thing.
Yeah. It was so dusty. But she brought one of those out to me and was like, read this. And it was basically about how Charles Russell had claimed, I forget exactly. I wish we still had the books, but we don't. But I think it was to say, oh man, there wasn't basically the idea of like Charles Russell saying in like 1914, like Gentile times have ended and everything. Like this was just a very different storyline that happened like was written right after that supposedly happened. And I was just like, oh, so everything I've seen in these videos didn't actually happen. Like I'm more inclined to believe this watchtower from right around that time than the videos now. So I was like, one of these things is lying.
So in other words, are you saying that you realize that the story has been changed over time as far as what 1914 was to represent and
exactly
things like, okay, yeah,
I think it was, I don't know, it was supposed to be something else, like either the start of I think it was supposed to be the start of the Great Tribulation.
Yeah, they thought 1914 was going to be the end at a point.
Yeah.
And then when it didn't end, then it was the beginning of the end. Or you know, they just keep kicking the can down the road, and now they have overlapping generations and such.
Yeah, so that was written at a point where they thought 1914 was still the end, basically.
Allow me to break in here for a second. This channel is made possible by you, the listener. If you appreciate what we're doing here, please consider supporting at patreon.com/shunned, or leave a review on iTunes or other platforms. Like and subscribe. All those things help the channel. If you're looking for merch, you can go get some Shunned swag from the shunnedpodcast.com website, or reach out there to be on the show. If you're looking for more ex-Jehovah's Witness content, I'll recommend my first podcast called This JW Life. You can find that on podcast apps as well as YouTube. And if you're feeling stuck in life, struggling to find happiness and community, maybe you're haunted by the past, beating yourself up, unsure of who you are or what you even want out of life now that you've lost this one identity that was given to you by a cult, reach out through my other sites like exjwhelp.com, that's exjwhelp.com, or storyworkscoaching.com. And let's see about working together to help you find a life that fits you and who you are, maybe for the first time ever. And now, back to our guest.
And reading that, I was like, okay, this is blatantly a lie. Somebody's lying. Someone has deliberately changed this. And then she also mentioned the Australian Royal Commission. And so I looked that up, and I was like, oh shit, that's a problem. And it kind of was not shocking to me, because I unfortunately know a lot of people who've been through those kinds of situations growing up. And it was just like, yeah, like what was being described there was like, that is how it goes. Like, I know that. And it was one of those things where it's like, I don't know why I never really questioned it. But in that moment, I was like, I knew I had a decision to make as far as whether or not I was going to leave or stay, because at this point, felt like I had enough information to be able to say, or at least give myself permission to dive deeper and to like find more things. And I kind of knew in the back of my head, the more I dove into it, the more I was going to find that was like, yeah, this isn't right. So it took a while. It took a couple months. But eventually I did decide, screw it. I'm just going to look stuff up. But I didn't know where to go. So I actually messaged my sister and was like, where should I go to like research this? And she led me to JW Facts. And the thing that sealed the deal for me of like, I can't be a part of this anymore was reading the letters to Hitler and the pandering to Nazi Germany.
Oh gosh, yes.
And I was like, all right, like there is absolutely zero chance that any God worth worshiping would have had any part in this. And I was like, there's no way you can come back from that. So I knew then it was not the truth. Getting like actually leaving was still a different story. I was still living with my dad at the time. It was like right before COVID started. So I was very soon to be without much contact to the outside world, just literally stuck in a basement all day. It was terrible. But again, my sister and I are super close, and we had a really close relationship, and she was able to help me out of it. And yeah, it was kind of a scary time though, right then.
Scary because you knew that if you left, scary why in particular? Because there's a lot of reasons that right before COVID things could have been scary.
Yeah. I mean, life is scary in general.
Sure.
But no, it was terrifying because I knew that I was going to have to let go of everything that I knew. Because I tried to make a case a little bit for like, well, even if I don't believe it, I can stay. But I was like, if there's anything in this world that's most important to me, it's being genuine and being yourself. And I felt to the people that I love that are still here, I can't give them a disingenuous version of myself. That wouldn't be fair to me. That wouldn't be fair to them. The best thing that I can do for everyone is just be honest and say, hey, like, this is what I believe. This is what I don't believe. And leave it there. But I still had to figure out when was the right time to do that, because I needed to find a place. Because like as soon as my dad found out, I knew I was going to be, on the streets basically. So I had to find a place. I had to find a working car because my car had just died. I needed to find a job that would pay me well enough to do those things. And I knew I wasn't where I needed to be for that. So for a while there, I just had to kind of pretend. And I had to pretend through my best friend's wedding, which happened during COVID. So it was kind of a weird, weird one that I watched over Zoom actually. But I was still like a part of the photos and everything. And, we brought up old friends that had moved away. And it was a really sobering time because I knew that this was the last time I was really going to be hanging out with all of them and enjoying their company. And it was like, I wanted to enjoy it and I did, but because, I care about them and I didn't want to lose them, but I knew I was going to. And it was just, that was really hard.
Yeah, that's really tough. It's how do you say goodbye to all of the people that have mattered in your life?
Yeah.
It is a very difficult thing to do. One of the hardest things I ever had to do was to sit down and write that goodbye letter to my family, when I also wrote my disassociation letter. And that was a really, really difficult thing to do. I just knew it had to be done. It was time. And
Yeah.
and also I knew in the end it was them who, while I was saying goodbye, I was only saying goodbye for my own closure, because I knew
Mhm.
that it was their decision in the end that this was going to be a goodbye, not mine. But, my door, in fact, I still live the same place. My door is always open. My phone number is the same. My email is the same.
Yeah.
They can all reach out whenever they want. I'm public on Facebook, you know, but they're not going to, because
Exactly.
they've made a choice that, they, want to stay where they are, and that's fine. I mean, I wish it wasn't that way, but
Right.
it's their choice, it's their journey, it's their life, and if someday they leave, I'll be here. But
Yeah.
um, it's up to them.
It's it's really easy to hope too.
Oh
And
yeah,
then you start playing out scenarios in your head of what could happen, and then you have to take a step back and it's like, oh, you realize like you're no closer to that than you were when you left. Like, and even if it were closer, how would you know? And it's just, it can really, really start to eat at you the more you think about it. Um,
yeah, and that's why I always talk about acceptance, and how acceptance means letting go of the hope that
yeah,
things could be different, because everybody's doing their best with what they've got to offer today. You can't ask more of anyone than their best, their personal best.
right,
And all of our families, the more we hold on to the hope, though, the more we stay stuck. And there's a lot of people that really, really, again, said this 1,000 times probably, but the thing that I see hurt people the most in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community, or one of the things, is that continued hope that, well, surely my family will leave. And I watch people all the time. Someone is feeling about something about how they had to let their family go, or their family has chosen, I guess I should say, their family has chosen to leave them. And it's really sad, because you often see people, and we mean well, and we don't want people to hurt, but you see people come in all the time and be like, oh, I just know one day you and your parents, you're going to have a great time again. That's not necessarily helpful.
no,
We need to learn to grieve those things, because holding on to hope that one day we're going to all be happy again, and one big happy family, when most of us weren't to begin with, really, if we're
right,
really honest about it, it just keeps that hope alive, which keeps us stuck. It tugs at our heartstrings constantly, and it's just not good for us. Part of the
right.
grieving process is letting go and realizing that everybody's on their own journey.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think, what's helped me most in doing that is by trying to be as involved in I don't want to call it my new life, because I like to think I've stayed relatively the same. But at the same time, there's no doubt that leaving is a huge change. And um, especially leaving behind pretty much everyone that you know, it's very difficult.
Hmm.
For me, the thing that really helped me to not be so caught up on like, oh, well, I hope they get out, and like being stuck on that, was just making new friends who were already out. And obviously that's going to be harder for some people to do than others, but I got kind of fortunate. I'm not great at making new friends, but I've been very fortunate that I think a lot of new friends have just decided to make friends with me. And that's meant the world to me. There's no way I'd be where I'm at now if I didn't have them. And yeah, that's the most important thing for me, I think, is just being around people who allow you to just live right now instead of being caught up in, everything that used to be. And that doesn't mean you can't miss them. Like,
Sure.
I miss them, everybody, but at the same time, I'm expecting to never speak to them again, and I'm expecting to never honestly even see them again. Or if they do, I'll probably get a sad look from them, like, oh no, they have tattoos now. There's an earring, like Satan's got them. Like, I've gotten that a couple times, and quite honestly, it's both sad and funny at the same time, because it's like, I don't want to dive too deep into like my own personal beliefs now, but like I'm atheist now, so like I don't believe in anything really. I like to think that there might be something else out there after this, just to make myself feel better, I guess. But
I'm right there with you.
yeah, it's a nice thought. So, and who really knows? But
Can't know.
exactly, it's a mystery. But I find it kind of comical when people are just so certain that Satan has just taken over my life, and I'm like, I don't know how to disprove that to people. Like, how do you convince somebody that Satan is not, pulling the strings in your life? If they're going to believe that, they're going to believe that. So
Yeah.
you just kind of have to laugh at it and be like, yep, totally, that's what's happening.
Yes. For Halloween, Jenny and I were invited to a 1980s horror themed party,
Oh,
costume party. Now, but here's the deal: Jenny and I have never seen a 1980s horror movie.
okay.
And horror is not really our thing anyway. Just not growing up on it. Not a judgment of anyone. If you enjoy it, hey, awesome. I wish I did. But so we were trying to think of what we could be for the party, and so what we landed on was so in the 80s there was this thing known as the Satanic Panic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, and so Dungeons and Dragons was satanic, and the devil would enter your home, and so was all the different heavy metal bands and things like that. And there was this book, Michelle Remembers, where it all kind of started, and just a lot of things. But anyway, so that's what we're going to be. Jenny's going to be the panic part. She's going to wear pearls and clutch them and be dressed up like a good fundamentalist. And I'm going to be the satanic person wearing a Megadeth shirt and, a Dungeons and Dragons hat. Because clearly, I mean, and a wallet chain, because we know that the devil loves wallet chains. And that's so, I mean, that just,
I've heard this.
Instantly, you can tell you're satanic then. But just to kind of poke fun at it, even just as I'm getting ready for that, just like, it's silly. Like,
it really is.
And I know my family thinks that I'm demonic because I do this work that I do and everything. Yeah, I'm helping really hurt people to heal. That's terrible.
Who's hurting these people though, too?
Horrible person I am.
Yeah, it's
the devil has misled me. I'm the one who's misled, not the people who are hurting people.
Right.
They're not misled. I, the person who I'm trying to help people on the other side, I'm the one who's misled.
Yeah, shame on you.
Shame on me. But it is funny. You can't. How can you disprove that? I'm a far better person than I ever was as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm guessing you are too.
I like to think so.
Yeah. That's why these people who are in your life today want to be your friend, right?
I hope so. I don't have anything else to offer, really.
You have something to offer. You're a good person.
I hope so. I try to be.
Yeah. Even outside of the organization.
Yeah, well, especially outside of the organization now.
Yes.
But yeah, too, I have like an inverted cross on my arm too.
Ah, nice.
So that one's fun. Because obviously witnesses don't even like worry about like the cross or that kind of imagery. That, I mean, JW.org logo, that's basically their cross now, right? But yeah, I find it funny because people get so offended by it, and I'm like, it has like so many different meanings. It like this tattoo is basically just a statement of symbols only have the meaning that you attach them to, because it can either be the cross of Saint Peter, where it's like he didn't feel worthy enough to die in the same way as the Christ, so he had himself inverted when that happened, according to legend. Or it can be like the super satanic anti-Christian symbol, and neither is technically right, but however you view it is just how it's going to be to you, and you're going to choose to be offended by it or not. And if anything, it kind of helps keep people who think, I don't know, I'm a Satanist away. So
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, in the Church of Satan is a rather humanist organization.
right, yeah, very
It
secular.
does some really cool things, some really nice things in
Yeah.
the world. And no, I get it. I mean, again, the people are going to see things through their own lens. You can't control the way your parents or your family or your former friends see you, can you?
No,
Any
and
more than you
I
can
don't really
control how
care
they
to.
see that cross on your arm.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have got it if I cared if people were offended or thought I was bad because of it. Like, in the same way, like, I don't really care what my old friends or people that I used to hang out with, I don't care what they think of me. Like, that means nothing to me, because I know what it's like to be in those shoes and judge people on the outside, judge people who leave. And it's, you're just repeating things that other people say. You're just believing what you think you're supposed to. You're not talking to me because you think in some way that's going to bring me back to Jehovah, because you think that's the right thing to do. Like, I don't think they really know what they think of me, because I didn't know what I thought of people who left. I just was kind of following the narrative of what I was supposed to do. And uh, I have to assume that's just what everyone else is doing too.
Sure, of course. They're following, and some part of their own personality plays into that, because there obviously are people who do talk to their relatives who should be shunned according to doctrine.
Yes.
So obviously there's some measure of individual personality or choice or whatever that shows up in how everyone expresses this thing that they're
Yeah.
involved in. But they're all, they're victims of this too. There's some peace that can also be found when we really look at it all for what it's been and realize that. So honestly, I don't really want much to do with them. Not because them as presently constituted is very unhealthy. They are all very, very unhealthy. You can't be healthy and be in a cult. So
Yeah.
I would love to see them outside of it, but inside of it, I know that I'm dealing with very dysfunctional, unhealthy people. I was
Mm-hmm.
once that person too.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go back into that. It's not healthy for me. So
Mm-hmm.
I actually don't really want to be around them because it's not healthy for me. And so that's a
Yeah.
change too. Going from pining for them and wishing I could be with them to going through the process of grieving their loss, also having some compassion for where they are and understanding how they got there, but then realizing that they're not good for me.
Yeah. They have nothing to offer you that you haven't experienced before, and they have nothing to offer that isn't unhealthy. Like, you know what
Yeah.
that is, and you know that it's not good for you.
Yep.
So, like, yeah, you might miss them as people, but
I miss the
especially when you're on
idea
the
of
outside
them.
looking in, it's very hard for them to have a conversation with you without being like, all right, so about this Jehovah, uh, it's gonna turn religious so fast, and it
That's all they got.
exactly, and
It's who they are. That's their identity. And so why would I expect anything different? That they are who they are. And I don't have any hate for any of them, but and I think a lot of us love the idea of our witness families. the idea of family, the idea of mom and dad. But if we're really honest about the execution of it in our life, it probably was not very healthy ever.
Yeah, I think we tend to remember the good times a little bit more than the bad.
Of
Um,
course.
and I think that's, in a sense, that is almost healthy because, you don't want to be sad about every moment of your life. But um, yeah, I think it is very difficult to be honest with, maybe my life wasn't as great. Like, it took me like going to therapy and several times actually before I finally realized, like, dang, I did not have a good childhood. Like,
Yeah, I see that too. I understand.
yeah.
Yes.
And it's funny because it's so obvious to pretty much everyone else that I've talked to about it. But for me, it was still just like, no, we know we had some good times. Everything was fine. Like, it wasn't the worst. Um, and looking back on some of the things that happened, it's like, yeah, it wasn't the
Well,
worst, but it wasn't good.
sure.
Um,
And can I say, this again comes up in my practice at times. Sometimes the reason that you don't feel it was too bad is because you've been taught to devalue yourself your whole life. And so, I mean, yeah, whatever happened to you, but you don't really matter anyway. So it was okay, right? But if you think about it in other terms and say, pick someone you care about outside of yourself and view that person in the same situation you were in, if their parents
exactly.
had treated them that way, how would you feel? Oh, you might be really pissed off then
Yeah,
because you care about that person. You just don't care about yourself because you were taught not to.
exactly. Yeah,
It's all part of
that's a good
healing.
point. I like that.
Yeah, it's all part of healing is trying to learn how to love ourselves instead of disowning ourselves. So there's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that went into us feeling how we do already that we have to
Yeah,
overcome.
and
But
like I left over 2 years ago, and I'm still trying to figure out like certain things that, like, I didn't think would be connected to being in a cult, but like the more I dive into it, I'm like, yeah, there's plenty more left to learn and plenty more left to unlearn. Um, so
yes, and time alone does, people will say time heals old wounds. Time alone doesn't heal itself. Time and work, and it would be the height of fallacy to think that we can just quit going to meetings, walk away, and we're just suddenly going to be okay and be healthy individuals, because
fish,
that's not how it works. You
yeah,
can't be around something that is your doctrine, your psychology, your culture, your worldview. You can't be around something that runs that deep into who you are and just stop going to the meetings and then it just magically
right,
all goes away. You have to do some real work to get rid of that stuff. And I mean, I have people who reach out at times who've been out, for 30, 40 years at times, who have found themselves, they're still stuck in certain ways because they never
yeah,
dealt with it. They never addressed it. And those patterns have continued to repeat in their life. And I mean, again, there's no shame in that. We're all just trying to figure it out. We're all ready when we're ready, and we need to have
right,
compassion for ourselves. But even if you just grow up in this for the first 18 years of your life, it's your 18 formative years, your childhood, and the way you were taught to see yourself and everything around you. It doesn't just go away.
no, definitely not. Like, I think this thing that I struggled with the most after leaving was just recognizing that I could now make my own decisions. I know that sounds weird because it's
Mm-mm.
leaving was kind of my own decision, but I for my whole life I felt very much so attached to something. I felt like that was just something I always had to take into consideration no matter what it was that I was doing. And n- after that, not doing that, like being like, I guess I want to do that so I can, like, that was a really weird experience for me for a while, because I was just like so used to, like having to think about how it's going to affect Jehovah or the congregation, or am I going to get in trouble for it, and it's just like nothing is that important. Like nothing that I want to do is that dramatic. Like I'm not going to hurt anybody. Like if I want to get a tattoo, or like I don't know.
And there's not always a right or wrong.
No, yeah,
There's
the
not just
world is not
one
black and
right way
white.
to do things.
No, there's so much more gray in the world than I realized.
Of course.
And I like the gray there. I like the gray because that's what adds diversity, and that's what adds different opinions, and I don't think you can have intelligent conversations or podcasts like this if the world was entirely black and white, because it would just be, here are the facts that we know, okay, have fun. There's nothing to discuss or care about. We all know, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that I can think for myself now.
Yeah, the scary part is now you're responsible for your own decisions. You can't say, well, Jehovah or Watchtower told me to do this, or mom and dad or whoever. It's like, oh, I got to own that. I did that, and it didn't turn out well. But that's okay, too, because when things don't turn out well, you can just make another decision and change. You're not like locked into a forever contract or anything on that decision. It's not a dedication. You just, okay, well, I did this. It didn't work. I'm going to pivot, go this way, and see if I can figure out how to make it work over here. All right.
Yeah. And your friends and family are very seldom instructed to not speak with you outside of the cult. So
yes.
It's that's refreshing as well.
Yes, it is. So how do we get to the point where you officially parted ways? So you just you wrote the letter?
No, actually,
how'd you leave?
I was still waiting for the right time to leave when somehow my dad found out that I didn't believe it.
Oh.
And he gave me like a week and a half or so, starting from nothing to leave and get out.
Right.
It just so happened that my sister was looking for a place at the same time, and we were lucky enough to find a place really quickly. I found that gas station job we were talking about before recording. At that point too, like everything just kind of came together. I was able to find a car that I could use right away. Like everything just came together, and it was so nice to see God's hand come and bless me with that. So yeah, I felt very, very fortunate in that. But yeah, the conversation I had with my dad before I left was very awkward, because he wanted to know why I didn't believe, but he didn't want me to tell him. Because the more that you explain it, the more that I'm spreading apostate information now, so they can't listen to that. So it was very awkward. And then sometime in that mix, he brought some elders over to the house to come and talk to me, and I was just like, I'm not giving you what you want. Like, you want me to say I don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness so you can disfellowship me, but like I'm not saying anything. And then they disfellowship me anyway. So and I was told after the fact. Someone came to me and was like, hey, just so you know, that happened. And I was like, oh, good to know. Thanks.
So did you have an official judicial committee in front of 3 elders, or
no?
They just sent a couple to talk to you just because you wouldn't play ball, basically?
I think so, yeah.
You wouldn't recognize their authority, so therefore they put their authority upon you in that way.
Yeah, which I don't think that that's how it's supposed to work, but that's what they did.
It can work however they want it to work.
Yeah. So that happened in August of 2020, and a
How'd that
few,
feel?
like, it felt really weird. I remember I don't know. I was just like, it felt surreal, honestly, because like kind of growing up in the back of my head, I had this idea that I might not be a witness for my whole life. And then to just actually have that just be like, you're not anymore was very sudden, and it felt very relieving.
Hmm.
Um, but it also felt strange. It felt like I was at a like a fish out of water kind of because I didn't know where to go from there really.
Oh, and you had no
So
I mean, I guess nothing materially had really changed in your life to some degree at that point, but
yeah,
you didn't have anything to do with this, did you? I mean,
no,
you tried not to get disfellowshipped.
right. I didn't want them to come over to my house and talk to me in the first place. I wasn't going to tell anybody. I was just going to be like, okay, I'm moving out now, bye, and then just kind of like slowly stop going and fade away. Unfortunately, that's not how it went. But um, yeah, I wanted no part of it. I didn't want to have to deal with the questions, and I wanted my friends and everyone to still be able to talk to me according to the rules, because I still wanted to have that
But
at
in the
least
end,
some sort of
eventually,
contact with it.
you would have eventually gotten an inverted cross tattoo, and they wouldn't have been able to talk to you anyway, right? Like,
I
in other
mean,
words, it's
probably not,
probably going to be the
but at least
eventuality.
yeah, but at least at that point it's kind
I
of
know,
still up to them and not
I
the
know.
organization. Because I would rather that. I'd rather them not talk to me because they don't want to, rather than someone's telling them not to.
Sure, but even when they don't want to, it's because someone told them as well, right? Like, it kind of is
Unfortunately,
because they bought into what
sometimes.
somebody else has said.
Yeah.
It's sad. I'm sorry that happened to you. I mean, especially for you to just find out randomly, hey, oh, by the
Yeah.
way, you've been disfellowshipped.
Yeah. I was not expecting
Shocking.
that. Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, I was still lucky enough to be able to get out, and once I did, it was like at that point, it's just me and my sister. We had each other, and we got a place together. It was just the two of us, and yeah, it was the start of you know a very new chapter for me that I never really imagined living. To be honest, like I always thought like it was possible, but I didn't know what it would even remotely be like. So like even if I wanted to imagine, it wouldn't be accurate. So it was all very new, and it took a while to get used to.
Okay. So first, let's talk about. So then, I guess once you were disfellowshipped, and maybe even before that, I mean, was that the end of your relationship with your parents?
So my mother and father also they got divorced when I was 19. They separated, and my mom got disfellowship because, like I said, they weren't happy together.
Sure.
My mother, the only thing that she could do to allow my father to remarry was, of course, infidelity and all that. So that's what happened, and she's now happily married with this other man, my stepdad. I'm sorry, what was the question? I had my
Oh,
ADHD brain just went off.
oh, that's okay. My ADHD brain does that all the time. So, the question was just about, you know, was that the last time, once you got
Oh yeah,
disfellowship, was that the last time that you really ever saw your parents again? I mean, did they shut
right.
you out?
So that is the last time I talked to my dad. I have not heard from him since. But my mother got disfellowship when she left my dad, and uh, currently at this point still are. They're trying to get reinstated, uh, as far
Mm,
as I know. Um, but because of that, since we were both kind of in the same boat, we still believe differently. But at this point, it's like we're both disfellowship, so we've had some talks and things like that. But obviously, I want to respect her decision as much as I don't love it to, do what she wants to do with her life. So,
It's her life.
yeah, but I'm at least grateful that I've had a little bit of interaction with her.
Okay.
It's nice.
Is there anything that you would say to anyone who, shuns you currently, whether it be your dad or anyone else?
I would just say I'm still the same person. Like, I'm not, the only thing that's changed is my religious affiliation. Because the truth is, excuse me, even when I was a witness and I wasn't super gung ho about it. Everyone knew that I was not the model witness people wanted me to be, but I was never super into it, and I'm definitely still not. So that's the only thing that's changed, is I'm not officially not a part of it anymore. Other than that, I'd like to think the only things that have changed about me is I've grown as a person, and I've learned more about myself in the world. But I'm not different. I'm the same me, and I know that it's so easy to think of someone who's left as, they've changed, they're a different person, but 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. They're just, if anything, discovering more about themselves, and that's why they've made the decision that they have. So, if you enjoyed hanging out with me then, and you enjoyed my company then, as you would now. So, I'm still me.
Yeah. Again, most of us haven't shut our doors. It's they who shut their doors. What about, so you mentioned at the end there about how, you've grown a little bit, and had just started talking about how, going out into this new life of yours has been its own adventure,
Right.
and an adjustment. How's that been for you? What has changed for you since you left?
Well, I'm married now, so that's cool.
Okay, that's a big change.
So yeah, so
During the pandemic, you met somebody?
yes, yes. Because once I left, all the other people who had also previously left Jehovah's Witnesses that I had known before, you kind of build a bond with those people who, like,
Sure.
hey, remember when we used to go door to door? Anyway, one of them was a girl that I had liked for a while, when I was like 16, and she liked me then too, and we apparently still had the same feelings after that, and so we dated for a while, and got married in April. So
Congratulations. That's awesome.
thank you.
That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Good for both of you.
Yeah, so it's also nice in a way, because we both understand what each other went through. Her being an ex-JW as well, so it's very easy to feel heard and feel seen with certain things. So uh, it's definitely, I think, a good thing for a relationship if you use it well.
Sure.
Sometimes you need another worldview as well.
Yeah, I was like, sometimes you're just hurt in the exact same ways, and you just trigger each other and
Yeah, that
cause
can happen
massive
too.
problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, it can. If again, it's no two people who get in a relationship are ever perfect, and everybody has, it's personalities, it's how you learn to work on things together, it's how you grow together, it's lots of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's definitely more of a good thing for us personally than
Yeah.
a bad thing. So
Cool. I'm really glad you're both happy. Any other changes? What do you enjoy about your life now?
well, I've decided to just actually pursue the things that I've wanted to do. I think I've missed the door on the NHL draft. I'm a little too old for that now. But I tried to really get out into music. I tried using a couple apps to find people. I ended up finding a guitarist who we're now best friends. That was like right after I left too, so it was like I found a good friend like immediately through that, which was awesome. And then there's a um, recording studio in Fort Collins called the Blasting Room. It's like a lot of great like artists go. Like Rise Against does all their stuff there.
Oh, I love them. Yes.
Yeah. Alkaline Trio, which is, I have the Alkaline Trio tattoo. Like one of my favorite bands of all time. They've recorded there. And it's for my birthday. My sister took me to a bar for my birthday, and I look like across the bar, and it's the guy who owns that place. He was like the drummer for the Descent, or still is the drummer for the Descendants. And I was like, I have to go say hi to him. I have to go say hi to him. And I did. And long story short, I'm now like really good friends with his son, and they have a band. I just released a song with that band. I'm like featured on one of their songs, and got a lot of other stuff in the works for that. So it's like, I feel like I've gotten a bit of a late start, unfortunately, but I've also gotten like so lucky. Like
Hey man, better late than never.
Yeah, I'm super stoked. So
you said you're 23. You got a lot of years ahead of you.
I sure hope so. I sure hope so. But yeah,
well,
it's
unless Armageddon
exciting.
comes, of course. But
yeah, well,
that's sometime soon, very, very soon, right?
It is the final part of the last days, I've heard.
Yes,
so
the final part of the final part of the last days.
Yeah.
So can we know the name of the song or anything? Is it out there where we could find you actually singing?
Yeah, so Hospital Socks is the name of the band that I sang with. They are they're so good. All the people in that band are amazing people. But yeah, Spotify, Apple Music. The new song is called 1, 5, and 4.
1, 5, and 4.
1, 5, and 4.
Spelled out or as numerals?
Yes, one spelled out. It's like, I believe it's just the progression of the song, like the chord progression. But I don't know. You'll have to talk to April. She wrote it.
Okay. But oh no, that's so if we go on Spotify, I'll link it up here. So
yeah, sure.
Hospital Socks 1, 5, and 4. And are you the only singer on it, or are you singing with someone?
I'm the second vocal on it.
Second vocal. Okay.
Yeah, April, she's the main vocal on it. Has a great voice.
That's so awesome. I'm so happy for you. I'm genuinely happy that you're getting to do that. That's so cool.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, what would I don't know, 12-year-old Trevor think of this?
12-year-old
or whatever age you wanted to do that. You know, what would younger Trevor think of you singing on a song with a band like this?
I remember being like 16 and trying to like think of ideas of how to like get my songs out there, get like just work for it. And I was like, man, the Blasting Room's right here. Like, it would be so cool to work with Bill Stevenson someday. And then to just meet him at a bar randomly, and like now we're friends, and it's like I've just gotten so lucky with that. And they're all amazing people, and I'm so incredibly grateful for that. I don't feel like I deserve it, but at the same time, I know I've worked hard to, you know, be at least a competent singer. I'm not the best in the world, but I try.
I don't know, man. I'd say if anybody deserves it, a kid who was singing in his kitchen to his mom, who was critiquing him at the age of like 7 or 8, who's always dreamed of this and had a cult in the way. I would say you deserve a chance. I think you've earned that chance.
Thank you. I certainly have it, and I just want to take advantage of it, and hopefully connect with people the same way the artists that I love, I've been able to connect with them. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah, it's all I've ever really wanted to do, and it just puts me over the moon that like I'm in this position right now where it's seeming more and more like it's coming together. So
heck yeah, Trevor. Do you have any other aspirations or things that you're hoping to reach out for, or just continue to this path and see where it goes? Anything else in life?
Uh, I'll be honest, I kind of have tunnel vision with the music thing.
Nice.
I don't really have a backup plan. I'll be honest. So
Okay.
hopefully people like me in music because I don't have many other skills. I can roll a burrito for you if you'd like. I want to. I
I
can
have
be a
a feeling
professional
you have
burrito
more
roller.
skills than than you think, but you're
It's hard to
obviously
think about.
able to articulate yourself well, and an intelligent person to have made it this far, to have seen through a cult. Like, there are things that you can see about yourself just in the fact that you were able to leave something, again, leave that machine behind.
Well, thank you. You too. Good job.
Thank you. Um, maybe I'll come to Fort Collins someday and get that burrito. But
Yeah,
I hope that I see you in the Louisville, Kentucky area. Well, Clarksville, Indiana. I hope I see you over here touring someday,
yeah,
with
for sure.
your band, whatever that band may
Is
be, and
that
I get to go to a show.
is that close to Cincinnati?
Oh yeah, about an hour and a half away.
Okay. Well, I'm a big Bengals fan, so
Oh,
maybe I'll go there for a show and a game, and then I'll find a burrito that I can.
heck yeah, man. We have burritos too.
You got burritos in Indiana?
Yeah, we have burritos in Indiana. There's
They're
burritos in
everywhere now.
Kentucky, Ohio.
Man, taking over.
Yeah. No, man, that'd be great. Yeah, if you ever come this way, just let me know. I'll drive to Cincinnati and hang out. That's
Yeah,
fine. Yeah, that'd
absolutely.
be cool. Um, but no, I appreciate you coming on here and telling your story. I anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to say?
Uh, I think that covers it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Well, I really
appreciate you
appreciate you
having me.
doing this. I uh, I really just can't stop thinking about the fact that you're actually getting to do this now, getting to sing and such, and I'm just really happy for you. Because I mean,
It's
who
only the
doesn't want
beginning.
to? You know, how many ex-JWs witnesses had these dreams, and maybe they can't come true quite in the way you saw them, or maybe certain opportunities have passed you by, but it doesn't mean the dream is dead.
Yeah.
And just like you're getting to play music, hey, maybe someday, maybe you never make it to the NHL. I'm certainly not going to make it to the NBA at this point. That has
I
passed
don't
me
know. We'll
by.
see.
Uh, but that doesn't mean that I can't still enjoy the sport, and it doesn't
Oh
mean
yeah.
that you can't still enjoy hockey. And who knows, maybe someday you all play at a hockey game or in a hockey arena or something. Who knows what might happen? So, the dreams might change or pivot a little bit, but they don't have to die. And you're
Yeah.
proof.
I think the key is just if you love something and you really want to do it and you have that ambition for it, the only way that's ever going to die is if you make it die. Like if
We,
you purposefully don't put in effort for it and you purposefully, decide that, hey, maybe I'll get a 9 to 5 job. And if that's what you want to do, that's totally fine. But it's very easy for me to say as someone who has not yet made it. Uh,
sure.
but the only way that you're ever going to get exactly what you want is by, really having a passion for it. And I love music. I love doing it. I get like when I'm recording songs and stuff, like I can be doing that for like 3 4 hours and I'm like, it's been 20 minutes and it's nothing else like that happens for me. So you gotta love it.
Yeah. And I'd say made it depends on your definition, but I
Right.
think you already have to some degree. I'm not saying you have to stop there, but stop and have gratitude too for where you've gotten
Right.
already,
Yeah.
because you've already made it farther than that little 7 8 year old kid ever thought he probably would.
That's true.
Had a chance
I
to.
remember my dream growing up. Um, I guess more when I was like 16 and like moved here. Um, there's a theater here called the Aggie Theater that I was like, I have to play there. Like that'll be when I make it is when I play there. Um, and Hospital Socks let me sing this song with them on stage at the Aggie in front of a lot of people, and it was just a blast. I forgot the lyrics. It was great.
Heck
um,
yeah. That is awesome. That is so great. I
yeah.
love every bit of that. Well,
Yeah.
Trevor, thank you for sharing your story. And I'm
Thank
sure
you
that
so
you'll
much for
help
having me.
other people out there, maybe even some with similar aspirations to pursue theirs.
Hey, yeah, if you're out there and you have similar wow, I already said it. Similar aspirations, we'll collaborate and we'll write a song about it. It'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely.